So I'm going to tell you what it's like to be Indigenous, my understanding of what it means to be Indigenous in colonial Canada. So what you need to understand is that our history goes back 13,000 years as a Nipissing Anishinaabe person. Right, this number predates Jesus by 11,000 years, just to give you a perspective of how long we've been here. No, for real, that's a long time. Right, we got here as the ice caps were receding. So the ice age was going, oh, I guess people are leaving for lunch, that's great. So as the ice caps were receding, that's when we got to this land. And so this land was covered under miles of ice for tens of thousands of years. So when we got here, there wasn't the vegetation that we see here. And our technology and our science was knowing how everything worked. We called ourselves the custodians of the land. Right? We took care of everything. We understood the connectivity of everything because we were here from the beginning. Right? When stuff got here, we were like, all right, this plant works, this plant doesn't work, these work great together. And we understood the connectivity between everything. Things like the birch tree. The birch tree was one of the first trees to get here to this area. It was such a part of our culture that even one of our totems, one of our clans, is birch bark clan. And that just goes to show like how important this tree was to our people because of the history that goes back, again, 13,000 years. And that predates the maple tree. The maple tree only got to this land 7,000 years after the Anishinaabe people got here to that lake. So the symbol of Canada, right? The actual like symbol the logo of Canada is 7,000 years younger than the Anishinaabe people to this land. Okay, so it's just to put in context like this colonial idea of Canada and how long we've been here. Again, when I was mentioning our technology was knowing the connectivity between everything. So as an example, like we'd know that if we took care of these berries, they'd bring rabbits, that would bring wolves, that would scare deer, that wouldn't eat our rice, right? So we knew that if we took care of these berries, we get rice. And it was this understanding and this connectivity with everything that was the basis for how we understood everything. The idea of wilderness, that's completely a colonial concept, right? This wasn't wild to us. It was very bountiful, it was very giving, it was loving. It was something that took care of us because we took care of it and everything in it. And the same way it took care of us. So we had partnerships, we had agreements, we had these treaties with everything. We had treaties with air, with rocks, with every tree, with every animal. And it was this understanding of mutually benefiting from a partnership where we both put forth an effort. Right? This was the understanding of a treaty. I was out in Australia when I was touring with Tribe, and we had this one Indigenous dancer from there who after the show we were hanging out and he was telling us about how back where his home, where he's from, they were coastal people, and they had this connection, this relationship with this pod of dolphins since time immemorable, where he knew the name of this pod of dolphins and he knew the clicks and the languages that they use. And he would go to the top of the water and he'd click the name of this pod of dolphins and they'd swim up and they'd cull fish. And he'd take his net and he'd scoop up that fish and he'd feed all the dolphins until they were happy and went back down. Then he took the rest of the fish to his family. This is a true story. This is how we all lived as Indigenous people. We had these treaties and understandings with everything. And it's this capitalism and this disruption of these values that really disconnected that connection that we had. I got home and brought up that idea of treaties with this animal, and a friend of mine was like, "Oh yeah, that's just treaties." She just pointed out that it was a treaty because that concept never came together. And she brought up that we have treaties with everything. We have treaties, with coyotes. Let me explain like the treaty with coyotes. We'd feed a coyote outside of our village and leave food for this one coyote. And this one coyote would know that there was food there, so it would fight off all of its other coyote friends. Right? So we had this relationship where like, yo, if I feed this one coyote, then we won't have a coyote problem. Right? And it was this understanding that was beneficially giving benefit to both relationships. So contact happened with my people, the Nipissing people, out by North Bay, colonial North Bay. So the colonial people out in North Bay were contacted in 1617 by a Jesuit named Jean Nicolet. And he looked at our culture in a very judgmental lens, but it gave me this look into the past and a different system that's completely based on other ideologies and values. Jean Nicolet described the Nipissing people. He said that, and I quote, "If the Nipissing aren't free and independent man, then there is no absolute freedom or independence on earth." Okay, nothing governed us. There was no hierarchy. We were governed by natural law, right? Like, there's nothing we can do that would make the day longer. There's nothing we can do that would make the moon change. These were the things that governed how we lived. So I like to arbitrarily compare our, just for the scenario, just to help realize what we're dealing with. So let's just say that Indigenous people, we're here hanging out, playing Uno, right? And Uno represented everything that we understood, all of our value systems, the connectivity of everything. And then colonizers showed up and were like, "Hey, welcome, we got Uno, let me show you how everything works. We can show you the intricacies of everything." And colonizers were like, "No, we're gonna play Monopoly now. You don't play Uno here anymore." And we're like, "Oh, well, no, it actually works really well. Like, let me show you some stuff in this Uno." They said, "Nope, now you do not pass go, now you do not collect $100, and you go straight to jail." Right? And Indigenous people are left there like, "Well, what's jail?" It's like, "Oh, well, you gotta read the instructions." It's like, "Well, where do I get the instructions?" "Well, you gotta go to Monopoly University." "Well, how do I get to Monopoly University?" "Well, you gotta get money." "Well, where do I get money?" "From the bank, and that's me. Welcome to Monopoly." Right? And that's exactly what happened here. That's exactly what happened here. Colonizers came to our land and disrupted our way of life through legislation, right? The culture ban. There was a culture ban. I don't know if a lot of people know this. They banned our culture. They banned our ceremonies. They banned our way of life because it disrupted and had this clash of values against capitalism. How are you going to explain the wealth redistribution being done ceremoniously, right? Through the potlatch ceremony that got culture banned. That was illegal. The wealth redistribution and the well-being of the entire community should not be achieved through anti-capitalist ideology of wealth redistribution, right? So this legislation is what creates white supremacy, right? White supremacy is legislated in colonial countries. People of color did not enact and enforce slavery laws on themselves. People of color did not enact and enforce Japanese internment camps on themselves or Jim Crow laws, right? They also didn't enact and enforce the Indian Act, which I currently live under, right? They also enacted and enforced and rectify justice issues like Holden Bushi, which obviously is in favor of white supremacy. So by all means, I'm not supposed to be here today. I'm not supposed to be here because of legislation. I'm not supposed to be here physically. I'm not supposed to be here politically as an Indigenous person. All of these things were disrupted and legislated against, right? Sir John A. Macdonald legislated the starvation of Indigenous people, right? We don't talk about this. Do you know how they enforced it? They came up with a group of people that are now known as the RCMP. Okay, so you have this institution in Canada that's a representative, a symbol of Canada that represents, that's intent. Its original intent is to disrupt and starve Indigenous people. Right? These are things that we have to start talking about as Canadians. There's no way to move forward unless we're talking about these things. So through legislation, they enact the Indian Act. So they disrupt our way of life. They disrupt our means of living, our ideologies, and we still persevered. We still came through. We still had a strong presence. We weren't eliminated like we were supposed to be. So they enacted residential schools because that was the last thing that we had. They took our kids from us, guys. They took our fucking kids from us. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear. You know, and we're all complicit in this. We were all alive when the last one closed. The last one closed in 1996. Okay, we need to understand that we're all a part of this. Everybody here, because we're a part of this, we were all alive when this legacy was happening. So, moving forward, it's really hard to talk about things like this and see something in moving forward when you're scared to go outside post Colton Boushie verdicts because of all these comments that are going on online on how, you know, it's okay to take Indigenous bodies now. Like, how am I supposed to go outside, like, feeling safe, knowing that there's legislation against that, knowing that there's legislation going in to disrupt my rights to the land through Kinder Morgan pipelines? How am I supposed to, like, you know, we need to talk about this. Everybody's talking about reconciliation. You don't even know our language. You know what I mean? Like, how are we supposed to get to this? I don't even know my language. You know what I mean? Like, this is where we're at as a country. So, we also need to re-examine the treaties, I think. Like, and again, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. There's a lot of people who aren't treaty people, who aren't, you know, Métis, Inuit people. Like, there's different. A lot of people out west still didn't sign treaties. So when I speak about treaties, I mean about, like, my own personal situation. So re-examining treaties and understanding the exact intent of what was in these treaties is extremely important because of the language barrier and the loss in translations. We need to understand what was understood between the two parties. What did we think we were getting? What did we think we were giving up? What was the spirit in everything that was said? And we need to pick through all of that. And that's as far as I got. That's my plan. Okay? I don't know where to go from that, but I think that that's a really good start to figure out where we're at now. A really important thing that I think is